You know that feeling when you're scrolling through your phone late at night and you see something that makes you stop? Like, wait, that can't be right. Wow, 18% dividend? Let me break down what that actually means. Um, if you put in $10,000, you'd get $1,800 back every year, just for owning it. You don't have to do anything. The money just shows up, and then you start thinking, wait, is this real? Could this actually help me retire early? Like way earlier than I thought? But then that other voice in your head kicks in. Hold on. This sounds way too good to be true. You know that voice, right? The one that's like, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So which is it? Is this the answer you've been looking for? The thing that changes your whole financial future? Or is this one of those things that sounds amazing in the beginning but ends up being a complete disaster? Let's figure it out together. My name is Richard, and I teach what schools should have taught us about money. I spend hours and hours researching this stuff, reading the boring legal documents that make your eyes glaze over, so you don't have to. And today, we're going to talk about something brand new, something that just came out. It's called the Calamos Nasdaq Auto Callable Income ETF. The ticker symbol, that's like its nickname in the stock market, is CAIQ. CAIQ. Don't worry about what auto callable means yet. I know it sounds like robot language. We'll get to that. What matters right now is this thing is advertising 18% income. That's huge. That's like 10 times what you'd get from a savings account. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what this is. In plain English, no fancy finance talk, you'll know how it actually works. Like really works, not just the marketing version. You'll know what the risks are, the stuff they don't put in big letters on the website, and you'll know if this is something you should even think about putting your money into, or if you should just ignore it completely and walk away. Because here's the thing, this could be really interesting, or it could be a smart move for some people, or it could be a trap that blows up and loses you a ton of money when the stock market has a bad year, and you need to know which one it is before you do anything with your hard-earned money. Before we jump in, let me paint a picture for you. You're working your regular job, right? 40 hours a week, maybe more if you're pulling overtime, and you're trying to save up money so you can retire early. You don't want to work until you're 65 or 70. That's too long. You want out at 50, maybe 55. So you can actually enjoy your life while you're still young enough to do stuff. But here's the problem. And this is where the math gets really important. With most normal investments, you get like 2 to 4% back every year. So let's do the math together. If you want $40,000 a year to live on when you retire, you need to save up $1 million. $1 million. That's $1 million. That's a lot of money. That takes a really long time to save, like 20 or 30 years of saving and investing. But what if you could get 18% back every year instead of just 2 to 4%? Then you'd only need about $222,000 saved up to get that same $40,000 a year. Let me say that again because it's crazy. Instead of needing $1 million, you'd only need $222,000. That's way less. That's like 5 times easier to reach. You could hit that goal way faster. So when something like this shows up, when you see 18% income plastered all over the internet, it's really hard not to get excited. Your brain starts going, wait a minute, this could change everything for me. I could retire 10 years earlier. I could quit my job way sooner. And you know what? Maybe it could. But here's where things get interesting. Okay, so before we talk about anything else and before we get into whether this is good or bad, we need to understand what we're even looking at here. Because if you don't know what something is, if you don't understand how it works, you can't possibly know if it's good or bad for you. You're just guessing. And here's what usually happens. And I see this all the time. Most people see a big number like 18% and their brain just stops thinking. It's like their brain shuts off. They go, I want that. How do I get it? Where's the buy button? And that's how people lose money. Not because the investment is necessarily terrible, not because it's a scam or anything like that, but because they didn't understand what they bought. They didn't ask the right questions. It's like buying a car without knowing anything about it. You see, it looks cool and the price seems okay, but you don't know if it needs special expensive gas that costs twice as much, or if the parts are really hard to find and fix when something breaks, or if it only works in certain weather and breaks down in the snow. You need to know what you're getting into. You need to understand what you're buying before you hand over your money. So let's break this down super simple in a way that anyone can understand. First thing you need to know, CAIQ is brand new, like really, really new. It started on November 20th, 2025. So right now, in January 2026, it's only been around for like 2 months. That's nothing. That's like barely any time at all. Imagine if a restaurant opened 2 months ago and put up a big sign saying, "We have the best food in the entire city, 5 stars." You'd be like, maybe, but can I see some reviews first? Can I talk to people who've actually eaten there? Has it been around long enough for us to really know if it's good? Same exact thing here. We just don't have enough information yet. Now, where does that 18% number come from? It comes from something called a weighted average coupon. I know, I know. That sounds super complicated and boring, but let me translate that into normal English. All it means is based on how this thing is set up, based on the math they did, they think it should pay out about 18% per year. But, and this is really, really important, that's not a promise. It's not guaranteed. It's more like, this is what we're hoping for. This is what we're shooting for. Think of it like a basketball player before a game saying, "I'm going to score 30 points tonight." Okay, cool. Maybe they will. Maybe they'll have a great game, but maybe they won't. Maybe the other team plays really good defense. Maybe they have an off night. It depends on how the game goes. Same thing here. So far, KIQ has paid out one time, just once, in December 2025. It was about 39 cents per share. That's one payment, one single month. You can't say, "Yep, this definitely pays 18% forever and ever," based on 1 month of data. That's like going to a restaurant once and saying, "This is definitely the best restaurant in America." We need way more information than that. Now, there's also another version called CAIE. That one started earlier in mid 2025. So it's a little bit older. It targets about 14% instead of 18%. And that one at least has a few more months of payments we can look at, maybe 6 or 7 months worth of data. But still, we're talking less than a year total. That's just not enough time to really know what we're dealing with. Here's what most people don't realize, and this is super important, that 18% is not like a normal dividend. You know how if you own Coca-Cola stock, the actual company that makes Coke, they pay you a dividend every 3 months? Like clockwork. Every 3 months, money shows up. They pay you no matter what happens. Stock price goes up, you get paid. Stock price goes down, you still get paid. Stock price just sits there and does nothing, you still get paid. It doesn't matter what the market does, you're getting that dividend. With CAIQ, it's completely different. The payment can stop. It can actually stop completely. Just turn off like a light switch under certain conditions. And we're going to talk about exactly what those conditions are in a minute. But first, you need to really understand this point. This is not set it and forget it income. This is not buy it and relax income. This is income with rules, with conditions, with fine print. Income that could disappear, just vanish, if certain things happen in the stock market. That's a totally different animal. When I first learned about this, here's what blew my mind. For decades, like for as long as most of us have been alive, investing was pretty simple for regular people, right? You had basically two choices. You buy stocks, they go up or down, and some of them pay you dividends. That's option one. Or you buy bonds and they pay you interest every year. That's option two. Pretty straightforward, not too complicated, but now, in the last couple of years, we're seeing these brand new types of investments pop up. Things that use really complicated math and weird financial tools. Things that used to only be available for super rich people, like millionaires and billionaires, and hedge funds with teams of PhDs doing crazy calculations. And now they're putting them in packages that regular people like you and me can buy. CAIQ is one of those. It's taking something that used to be rich people only and making it available to everyone. And on one hand, that's actually pretty cool. We get access to stuff we never had before. It's like the fancy investment strategies that were locked behind a velvet rope. Now we can walk right in. But on the other hand, Kia, and this is the problem, most people have no clue what they're actually buying. They see 18% in big letters and their brain goes, oh, that's like a dividend stock, but way better. They think it's just like a superpowered, turbocharged dividend stock. It's not. It's something completely different. It's like comparing a regular car to a spaceship. They both get you places, but they work in totally different ways. And if you don't understand the difference, if you treat a spaceship like it's just a fancy car, you might make a really bad decision that costs you a lot of money. So if it's not a normal dividend, how does it actually work? How does it make that 18%? Where does the money come from? Let me explain it in the simplest way possible. No finance jargon, just plain English. Okay, here's the deal. If you're going to put your hard-earned money into something, money you worked 40 hours a week to earn, you should know how it makes money. Not just, oh, it pays me every month, cool, but like, really understand where that money actually comes from. What's happening behind the scenes? Because that's where the risk is hiding. That's where the danger is. So let's talk about how this actually works. And I promise, I'm going to make this so simple that anyone can understand it. Even if you've never invested $1 in your life, you're going to get this. The fund holds a bunch of financial contracts called structured notes. Think of a note like a promise between two parties. CAIQ currently has about 54 of these notes. Each note lasts about 5 years, and they all started at different times. That's called laddering. It's like if you planted 54 apple trees, but you planted one every week for 54 weeks. So they're all at different stages of growth. That's important. We'll come back to why later. Now, what do these notes actually do? They pay something called contingent coupons. Okay, forget that fancy term for a second. Contingent just means maybe. Like, I'll pay you, but only if certain things happen. The notes pay you high monthly income, but only as long as certain rules are followed. And the main rule has to do with something called the barrier. Okay, this is the most important part. The barrier is like a line in the sand. For CAIQ, that line is 30% below where the NASDAQ 100 stock index was when each note started. Let me give you a super simple example. Let's say one note started when the NASDAQ 100 was at 20,000 points. By the way, the NASDAQ 100 is just a fancy way of saying the average of 100 big tech companies. Think Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, that kind of stuff. So this note started at 20,000. The barrier is 30% below that. Here's the simple math. 30% of 20,000 is 6,000. So if you take 20,000 and subtract 6,000, you get 14,000. That's the barrier. That's the line in the sand. As long as the NASDAQ 100 stays above 14,000, this note keeps paying you every month. You're happy? Everything's great. But if the NASDAQ 100 falls to 13,500, which is below that 14,000 line, the payments stop. They just stop. No more money coming in. And if it's still below that line 5 years later when the note ends, you might lose some of your original money too. Like, if you put in $10,000, you might only get back $7,000 or $8,000. Let me give you an example that makes this super clear. Imagine your friend makes you an offer. They say, I'll give you $100 every month for the next 5 years. You're thinking, awesome, that's $1,200 a year for 5 years. I'm in. But then they say, oh, but there's one catch. If the temperature outside drops below 32 degrees Fahrenheit and stays there for a whole month, then I stop paying you. You'd be like, wait, what? Yeah, if it gets that cold and stays cold for a whole month, no more payments. And if it's still that cold 5 years from now when our deal ends, you actually have to give me back some of the money you already got. Now, would you take that deal? Well, it depends, right? Do you live in Florida where it basically never gets that cold? Then maybe you'd take the deal. You're probably safe. Do you live in Alaska where it's freezing cold all winter long? Then probably not. That's a terrible deal for you. All right, so I just spent a bunch of time telling you all the ways this could go wrong, and I meant every single word of it. But to be fair, I also need to show you why some people are actually interested in this thing. Because not everyone who buys CAIQ is making a mistake. Some people actually understand the risks. They know what could happen. And they're okay with it. They've thought it through. They've done their homework. So let's talk about who this might actually work for and who should absolutely stay far, far away. Let me compare 3 different types of investments that pay you income. Think of this like comparing 3 different jobs that pay you different amounts but have different rules and different levels of stress. First, normal dividend stocks or ETFs, like VOO, that's just the S&P 500. That's like owning a tiny piece of the 500 biggest companies in America all in one package. Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, all of them. How much income do you get? About 1 to 2% per year. So if you put in $10,000 here down, you'd get back about $100 to $200 a year. Not much. That's like $8 to $17 a month. What's the risk? Well, when the price goes up and down with the stock market. Sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down. That's just how stocks work. How hard is this to understand? Super easy. Anyone can do this, even if you know absolutely nothing about investing. You can buy VOO and understand what you own. It's the basics. How long has this been around? Forever, like decades and decades. Since the 1970s, we know exactly how it works. Second, covered call ETFs, like JEPI. That's one of the popular ones you might have heard about. How much income do you get? About 8 to 12% per year. So if you put in $10,000, you'd get back about $800 to $1,200 a year. That's way better than the first option. That's like $67 to $100 a month. What's the risk? You still get paid even when the market drops, which is really nice, but you miss out on the really big gains when the market goes way up. Like if the stock market goes up 30% in a year, you might only get 15%. You're giving up some of that big growth to get more steady income. That's the trade-off. How hard is this to understand? Medium. You need to learn a little bit about options, what a call is, but it's not too bad. You can learn it. How long has this been around? About 5 years or more for most of them. So we've actually seen how they work in good times and bad times. We have real data. Third, auto-callable ETFs, like CAIQ, the thing we're talking about today. How much income do you get? They're targeting 14 to 18% per year. So if you put in $10,000, they're hoping to give you back $1,400 to $1,800 a year. That sounds amazing, right? That's like $117 to $150 a month. But remember, and this is huge, it's not guaranteed. What's the risk? High, really high. Your income can stop completely. Just turn off like a faucet. You can lose your original money. It all depends on what the stock market does. How hard is this to understand? Pretty hard. There's a lot of complicated pieces, barriers, structured notes, ladders. It's a lot to wrap your head around. How long has this been around? 2 to 8 months? Basically brand new. Fresh out of the box. We have no idea how it works when things get bad because it's never been through a bad time. So you can see the pattern here, right? The more income they promise you, the more complicated it gets, the riskier it gets, and the newer it is. It's like you can have a safe, boring job at the post office that pays $40,000 a year with benefits and a pension. Or you can have a risky, complicated, commission-based sales job that might pay $80,000 a year, but might also fire you with no warning if you have a bad quarter. Which one you choose depends on your situation, your age, your other income, your risk tolerance. Here's my honest take. And I'm just going to be real with you. If you're brand new to investing, if you just started putting money into index funds in the last year or two, if you're still learning the basics like what's a stock and what's the difference between a stock and a bond, this is not for you. Not even close. You're not ready for this level of complication. And that's totally fine. That's not an insult. That's just reality. You don't go from, I just learned what a stock is, to, I'm going to buy complicated structured notes with barriers and contingent coupons. That's insane. That's like going from, I just learned how to drive in a parking lot to, I'm going to race Formula One cars at 200 miles per hour. You need to walk before you run. You need to crawl before you walk.